In this lecture, we're going to be covering NIST Special Publication 800-37. And just like I did with 800-53, I suggest you download this now using these links or go to the download section and get them there. For 800-37, I'm going to be covering both Revision 1 and Revision 2. And there are a couple of good reasons why I choose to do both. Revision 1 was published in February of 2010, and it was updated in June of 2014, so that is some years ago. Revision 2 was published in December 2018. First off, we don't know how long they keep questions in question databases, meaning you might still see questions from Revision 1 even if the exam was updated after Revision 2 was out. And if you take an exam where the last update is prior to Revision 2's update, well then they're still adding questions to the question pool after the new curriculum is out. They don't just wait for the next exam update to write questions. They write new questions all the time. So to ensure you are as prepared as I think you should be, I'm covering 1 and 2. 800-37, like many other government publications, have wonderful, long, and convoluted names. I don't think I have ever worked with anyone who referred to them by their full name. It's just 800-37. But just for reference, here is the name of Revision 1, Guide for Applying the Risk Management Framework to Federal Information Systems and Security Lifecycle Approach. The full name of Revision 2 is Risk Management Frameworks for Information System and Organizations, a System Lifecycle Approach for Security and Privacy, which is why we just use the number. If you do see the trend here though, the newer revisions have taken federal out of the name. They know so many people outside of the government use them. 800-37 and 800-53 are closely tied together. So often in one NIST standard, you will see it referencing another. If you remember, we had that three-tiered pyramid-looking thing where Tier 1 was the organization, Tier 2 the mission and business processes, and then Tier 3 is where we found 800-53. That was our information systems. There we had that 6-step process that we used for our risk management lifecycle. 800-53 was step 2. 800-37, which we're covering now, is step 5. And in step 5, this is where we authorize our information systems. In Revision 2, we still have the same 6 steps, but we also, in the middle, have a step that is prepare, which is an important step because this is also where we get senior management on board. We have 7 major objectives that were updated in Revision 2, and they're pretty easily broken down. The first one provides a closer linkage and communication between risk management processes and the C-suite, or the governance level of our organization, and the individual processes and the activities at the system and operational level of the organization, meaning senior management supports the initiative, we have full buy-in into the processes, and there is that two-way communication that we need to ensure that what we do is the right thing to do, and we then improve our risk management process by having it across the entire enterprise, which should hopefully make it more efficient and more effective. And now we're going to take a look at the NIST cybersecurity framework and how that can be aligned to our risk management framework and implemented using the risk processes. Another big change in 800-37 Revision 2 is that we integrate the privacy risk management processes into the risk management framework. That did not exist at all in Revision 1. It did exist in 800-53, but never in 37. And that all the publications work in unison and enhance each other is what makes them so nice. They give us the defense in depth that we would want. It also aligns with NIST 800-160, where we develop trustworthy, secure software and systems by aligning the entire lifecycle of the system with the integrated processes in that publication. Then it touches on supply chain risk management. For the exam, I don't think you need to go more in depth than that, but COVID is a good example of how critical our supply chain is. We are going to talk more about supply chain later, but just like we have business continuity for everything else, when a server breaks, when a data center is compromised, when we have all those events, we have plans in place for mitigation and how we get back to normal operations. But if we are reliant on suppliers, what happens if one vanishes, or two, or five? And I brought COVID up because here in Puerto Rico, on top of all the other things that have impacted our lives through COVID, we can also see that many of the stores and many of the businesses don't really get the supplies they need. I know the same thing is a fact for many of regular businesses where they rely on external suppliers to function as a business. And years before COVID happened, I have sat in business meetings where we discussed the risk of a pandemic, and as part of that, our supply chain. But many businesses never considered it an option. And even if they did not, in their wildest dreams, think it would be to the extent it is now. And that is probably enough COVID talk for now. But as part of our risk management, if we are reliant on suppliers, how do we ensure that we have redundancy for the things that we need? That allows our organization to implement the controls that will benefit us, as well as complement the traditional baseline and integrate it a little more with NIST 800-53. And to simplify that, the better the communication and linkage with senior management and all the way down throughout the organization, that will, again, make our risk management processes more efficient, more effective, and more cost effective. We align this with the NIST cybersecurity framework that we will look at in a minute. We implement security throughout the entire lifecycle of any system or software, meaning security and privacy are requirements in the initial design and all the specifications we need for a certain piece of software. And when I say the entire lifecycle, that means from when we acquire the software all the way until it is completely removed from all our systems. This was the cybersecurity framework I was talking about earlier, and as you can see, slightly different faces, but they are really no different than what we have looked at already. And you will see the same trend when we talk about different frameworks for risk management or incident response or project management. It is not important to understand phase 5 of this process is whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is you understanding the flow of it. We do this, then we do that, then this helps us with that, and so on. Understand the logical sequence of the things. Memorization on this exam is not going to help you very much. You need to understand how and why it works together. You might get a question where it's about access control, but it also touches on encryption and confidentiality, and we do it over the network. And then with all those facts, you need to find the best answer. And I'm not saying all this to scare you or make you feel overwhelmed, but I think the more realistic picture you have of the exam, the higher chance you have of passing. And now, back to the cybersecurity framework. We identify our assets, we put protection in place for those assets, we detect whenever there is an attack or the asset is compromised. Then we respond to that, we recover, and then the cycle starts over. Here, again, I suggest you download it now. Each of the 5 categories have subcategories. If we look here at identify, you can see it has asset management, business environment, governance, risk assessment, risk management strategy, and supply chain risk management. Then for each of those areas, we can drill down into even more detail. And it has references for all the frameworks they suggest for that specific phase. If we look at identify and asset management, you can see even more subcategories. If you look at ID AM-1, that is our physical devices and systems that are within our organization. 2 is the software platforms and applications within our organization. 4 is our external systems. This could be cloud computing. If we have any software as a service or infrastructure as a service or whatever else we use in the cloud, this is it. And remember, there is no cloud. It is just someone else's computer somewhere else. The cybersecurity framework is really that connecting link that ties all the other applications together. So if we look at cloud computing number 4, it has specific references to the other publications that touches on that specific topic. In this case, that could be CIS CSC 12 or COVID-5 or ISO 27001 or NIST 800-53. For 800-37, the same thing I said for 53, don't get overwhelmed, applies here too. What you need to know for the exam is not very much. And for the people who use these frameworks, it is excellent that they are in so much detail. It makes our jobs so much easier that someone has been there before us, put this tremendous amount of work into it, so we don't have to. When you implement it in your organization, there is still a ton of stuff to do. But that would have been many times greater if you had to start from scratch. 800-37 and the cybersecurity framework has references and abbreviations just like 800-53 did. And I think it is appropriate to end this lecture just like I started it. Download these now. All right, let's move on.